this video, I'm going to cover how to sharpen a cabinet scraper. Check out our other video on how to sharpen a card scraper. We have here a cabinet scraper and a card scraper. The biggest difference here with the card scraper is that it's just a piece of metal that's held in your hand and you scrape along, but it's sharpened a little differently. It's actually sharpened to a 90-degree edge there with a burr put on both sides. The cabinet scraper is actually sharpened only on one side, so it essentially has a 45-degree angle on one side and then a burr put on one side only. So that's really the main difference here. There's two steps to sharpening a cabinet scraper, just as there are to sharpening a card scraper. In fact, I would say it's more than two steps, it's two processes. So we've got here, the first process would be honing the edge. So we're going to file it, we're going to go through the whole honing process, and we're essentially going to get a really sharp edge. The next step, or next process rather, would be to burnish that edge. I've started by putting a little water on my diamond stones. I'm going to start with a fine diamond stone, working the back of the scraper blade to remove the old burr. So we're just going to go here, and I don't want to feel any burr on that back side. So let's just work this until that burr is gone. Okay, now that the burr is gone, I'm going to stick the blade into the vise here. And we're going to start by filing the edge. This is different than most of your edge tools. Most of your edge tools, you don't file them. The reason why you file a scraper edge is because when you burnish this, which will be the next process, when we burnish it, we're actually pushing that steel over. So we really have to file it to get a fresh new edge. Be sure to check out the other videos where we talk more in depth about the definition of sharp and the importance of having two highly polished surfaces coming to infinity. That's really the definition of sharp. What we have now is I've filed this at 45 degrees approximately. This doesn't have to be exactly 45, it can be a little bit higher. I've even sharpened it up at 80 degrees, but 45 degrees is fairly optimal. Okay, so now I've filed it and I have a burr. I will not want to go on to the next step until I get a burr. Very important that I get a burr with the file. And I'm feeling that burr right here, right there, all the way across. Let's now go to the stones, and our goal here, next step, is to remove that burr on the back side, because that burr is a tactile indicator that we can now go on to the next step. Let's go here to the diamond stone. I'm using a coarse diamond stone, holding it at 45 degrees, working it. How do I know that I've gone enough on this stone? Well, when I feel a burr, okay? I've got a burr here, not so much in the center. Let's work this a little bit more in the center. Yeah, that's pretty good. Let's go just a tad more. There we go. I've taken the burr off. Now we'll go to the medium stone here. Put the burr back on. Feel the burr. Got the burr. That means that the bevel is meeting the back. Now the burr is gone. In fact, the burr is off of the back, but it is on the bevel. So now we're going to go here to the bevel, and we're going to put the burr back onto the back. Got the burr again. Let's inspect this edge and see how it looks. Of course, it should look polished all the way across. You can hold it in the light and you can see the light reflecting. You can see a little bit of the file mark right there at the edge. I'm not going to worry about that. But if I see an even light reflection all the way across there, an even polish, then I know that we're good, we're ready to move on. What I don't want to see is any file marks that may have been left over that we didn't get out with the stones. If I did see some file marks, I would really want to go back to the coarse stone. I'm using a hard translucent oil stone, and I'm going to work this edge. This is the finest of the oil stones, and we're just going to put a really fine edge, again maintaining about 45 degrees. I should feel a burr on this as well. Take it out. Let's check it on my thumbnail. Yeah, it's all right. I'm going to come back to this and just work it just a little bit more. That's better. I can feel a nice burr. What I did there is I lifted it up just a little. Again, not a problem. Just lifted it up a few degrees, and I've got a nice burr. We'll take that burr off, and we should be ready to go on to the next step. We can test this, though, on our thumbnail. Yes, that catches a lot better on my thumbnail. And now we can move on to the next process, part 2 of sharpening a scraper. I'm going to start just as I did on the card scraper. I'm going to start on the back of the tool using a burnisher. Now this burnisher is a hardened piece of steel, and it's also polished, which is very important. Hard and polished. I've heard people using the back of a chisel. I don't recommend that because you have a sharp edge, and that sharp edge could cut the burr off when you're working it along. Plus you'd have the sharp edge working towards your fingers. I like to use the burnisher, and if you buy a burnisher, I'd recommend even polishing it up a little bit. Go over it with some steel wool. You can even really fine sandpaper, some 600 grit. Work it up and get it as polished as you possibly can. Let's work the back of this scraper. So my burnisher is right here on the back. I'm taking it, starting here, working off, and then coming here and working off like this. So this is called ticking the edge, and although I haven't started counting, so I've miscounted here, I'm going to go about 15 to 20 times working the back of this tool. What that's doing is it's drawing the steel up like this. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to start here at 45 degrees. So I'm going to start here at 45, and we're going to raise it up to about 65 degrees. If I go too far with the angle, if I go up like this, it's going to make for a weak burr, and it's not going to cut. Again, 45 degrees, and then raise it up just about 65 or so, just about there. Okay, let's put it in the vise like this, tighten it down, and I'm going to burnish this. Now keep in mind, this is a razor sharp edge, so if I slip with the burnisher, I'm going to slice my finger open. So what I want to do is, instead of positioning the burnisher like this, I'm going to take the burnisher like this, because most of my motion is across. However, if I do slip, I'm going to come down here and hit the handle and not my finger. 45 degrees, just like this. Again, starting here, working it across, coming in like this, working across like this. 45 degrees, working it just like we did the card scraper, but this time we're at 45. Now I'm going to start rolling it to 65 degrees, lightening up the pressure, and I can actually see a white line form on the top here. And that's because I'm taking this and rolling it over like this. Again, it's about 45 to about 65 degrees, like that. Now we have it. We've got a sharpened scraper blade. Now we need to know which way to put this in the scraper. So you see the angle here of the scraper. We need to determine which way to put the blade in here. The blade is going to cut. This actually is leaning away from you. But let's just try this. Let's put the blade, again, angling it the same way that the scraper is angled, and run it on here. It's not doing anything. Let's turn it around. Again, same angle. It catches the board. That's the way that we put it in the scraper. Just like that. Put your thumb here, your finger right there. Tighten right up on these. And then apply a little bit of tension right here. One side note, if you're buying a scraper, I highly recommend the Stanley number 80, only available on the used market. Also, I prefer the thinner blades. I've experimented with sometimes a thicker blades and they just don't work as effectively. So a thinner, the original blades are the best. Original blade, if you need to make one, you can even use a card scraper blade and make it to fit in here. You'd have to cut it and refile it. Okay, let's try out this scraper. This is curly walnut, and I think that is sharp. If your scraper isn't that sharp, all you got to do is go back to the beginning of the video.